All right. Thank you again, Elizabeth, for inviting me. I learned just a couple words in Croatian to be able to say hello to you. So, dobro večer and drago mi je. And I will start my presentation here. So just a little bit about me. I was actually a Rotary Exchange student in high school, and I lived in France for that year. So I did spend some time in Europe, learned French, then came home, went to college, and I've been living here in Madison, Wisconsin since 1999. My husband and I are both Rotarians, but we're in different clubs. And my club is 10 years old, just like yours. And as I was telling Elizabeth earlier, we meet hybridly, especially since COVID and some of our members had to move further away. So having that option to be online has really helped some of our members keep in touch and stay members of our club. I am going to share my screen, and I think maybe I don't think I'll be able to keep an eye on the chat if people have questions. So maybe just interrupt me, or if someone else could keep an eye on the chat, I'd appreciate that. And
no problem, just don't mind us.
Can you guys see my presentation now?
Yes, we see it.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. I think Edwin was going to pop in because he has a couple slides in here, but if he doesn't, then I can do his part also. So I am our district's foundation chair right now.
Excuse me, Erin, I can see participants of the, do you guys see the presentation?
Yes, I see the first slide, our Rotary Foundation.
Really? Where am I then? Sorry. Okay, Erin, just move on. I'm sorry, but I will try.
All right. I'm our district's foundation chair right now. I've been my club foundation chair for several years. And as the foundation chair, responsible for kind of three main areas of the foundation. And so one is fundraising and encouraging Rotarians to donate to the Rotary Foundation. The second area is in spending the money that we have. So as I'll explain later, the money that we all donate to the foundation is invested by Rotary for 3 years. And then it comes back to us in the form of district designated funds and then matching money from the World Fund. So at the district level, we spend the district designated funds on matching grants. And then the third area is in stewardship. So making sure that we're spending our money fairly, that we're being ethical, and that following all the rules and that sort of thing. The Rotary Foundation's motto is doing good in the world, and it's to enable Rotarians to advance world understanding, goodwill, and peace through the improvement of health, support of education, and the alleviation of poverty. In 1917, at the Rotary International Convention, Rotarian Arch Klump made a contribution of $26.50 to start the Rotary Foundation for the purpose of doing good in the world. And every Rotarian has inherited that mantle of doing good in the world, and this is our legacy. From those beginnings over 100 years ago, Rotary Foundation has evolved to be one of the foremost charitable organizations in the entire world. Very respected for the amount of work that we do and the amount of the actual money that people donate that goes directly towards projects. All right, so the Rotary Foundation has several different areas of funds, and I'll talk about each one of these a little bit further. The first one is the annual fund, and that's the main one that we really want people to be donating to. The second big branch is Polio Plus. Then we have an endowment fund, and after that, several different areas of focus funds. So Polio Plus, as the name suggests, the funds are used to eradicate polio. All money matched by the Gates Foundation from Bill and Melinda Gates at a 2-to-1 rate. So every dollar that we donate to Polio Plus gets matched 2-to-1. The annual fund, or share as you might see it referred to sometimes, this is the money that comes back to all of our districts in the form of district designated funds, which you'll also referred to as DDF. And endowments are usually larger gifts, and the funding for those is used to sustain the foundation for future generations. And just as an example, a gift, a $25,000 endowment gift, can generate $1,000 annually to share, which then is $500 to your district every year in DDF. All right, a pop quiz here for polio, the latest statistics. Does anybody here know how many weeks it's been since the last recorded case of wild polio virus in the world? Any guesses? No, it's been 0 weeks. We had a case reported in Afghanistan just last week on October 4th. So far in 2023, we've had 8 cases of wild polio virus, 2 in Pakistan and 6 in Afghanistan. Our numbers are going down significantly still. You can see 2021 was a banner year for us, where we only had 6 cases total reported. But 2022 we had 30. So far this year we're only at 8, so that's good news. The bad news is that eradication of polio right now is really a question of politics and logistics, and the money is definitely important. But for example, all 6 of the Afghanistan cases come from the Nangarhar province. And in 2011, only 8% of households in this province had access to clean drinking water, but only 31% of the people living there had any sort of literacy. As you know, girls aren't allowed to go to school in Afghanistan. A lot of times women aren't allowed out of the homes without being accompanied. And so accessing children to give vaccines to is something that happens through accessing women. And when our healthcare workers don't have access to women, it makes it very difficult to get vaccinations out in these provinces. So I encourage everyone to keep donating to Polio Plus. October 24th coming up here is World Polio Day. So if your club is interested in doing anything for polio, that's a great time to do it. But we are almost there, but not quite. So here's a little bit about polio in Croatia that I looked up for you guys. Does anyone here know when the last case of polio in Croatia was? No guesses? 1990.
Maybe 72.
1990, quite recent. My guess is that probably everybody on this call was already alive when polio was still wild in Croatia. The European region as a whole was certified polio-free in 2002. And the last case, so it takes 3 years for a state or region to be declared polio-free. That means that the last case of wild polio in Europe was from 1998. That occurred in Turkey. Oops, go back. Oh. Last case was in Turkey in 1998. So here is a chart. This goes through 2022 last year, showing some statistics and global numbers of wild polio cases. So this is just since the turn of the century in 2000. And you can really see that we've made really good strides, especially over the last 10 years. So again, we're almost there, but not quite yet. This here is a picture, I think it's in Nigeria, but they're testing their sewage for poliovirus. So this is actually, communities all over the world test for all kinds of viruses in sewage. I know even here in the US, we track COVID by testing sewage and wastewater. And so the same thing is for poliovirus. Some of the money for Polio Plus not only goes to, of course, Afghanistan and Pakistan, but also countries that are already polio free and helping them with tools to keep up their vaccination rates. So this is an example of a geo-tracking system in the Republic of Congo. And before they had this geo-tracking system, their healthcare workers would have to go door to door. They, use paper and pencil, writing things down, hoping, that they were getting all of the houses and in the high-risk areas. And then after the use of this geo-tracking system, they all have, electronic devices with them where they can mark immediately households that they've been to, households that are clear. At the end of the day, they can get together and look at their maps and see exactly which high-risk areas need to be their priorities for the next day. So on to talking about the annual fund and share. So it's really a 3-year process for how your donations to the annual fund get invested and then come back to your district. So for example, a $2,000 donation, or sorry, $200,000 donation would get invested for 3 years. So if that happens this year, and then in the year 2026-27, half of that, so $100,000, comes back to the district in the form of district designated funds. The other half of that goes to the World Fund, which is used to match global grants and other sorts of polio projects, Peace Fellows, etc. And then the earnings used, which is typically the earnings, so about 6 or 7%. Those are used for the administrative costs to Rotary International's, the Rotary Foundation. So a really huge portion comes back to us. Now, of that $100,000, the 50% that comes back in DDF, for the first year, half of that is designated for district grants only, and half of that is for global grants. Now, anything that your district doesn't use up in that first year on district grants, it gets rolled over into global grants. And the global grants, you don't lose the money. If you don't spend all $50,000 one year, you roll over into the next year, but on top of any money that you didn't use for district grants. So district grants is just a one shot for 1 year. So here's some statistics for my district in 6250. So last year, we had over $500,000 in giving to the Rotary Foundation with the different funds. So we had $385,000 that our members donated to the annual fund, over $100,000 to Polio Plus, almost $40,000 into some of the other funds, such as the areas of focus, and a small amount last year into the endowment fund. So I think we had, I want to say it was about $150 per member or so was our average giving level in 6250. So when you're trying to decide where to donate your money with the Rotary Foundation, your first choice is going to be to the annual fund. Oops, go back. There we go. The annual fund. Again, because the annual fund is what comes back to your district in the form of designated funds. Rotary's goal is $100 per Rotarian every year. I would assume that in Europe, they would probably say 100 euros, since we're kind of equivalent sometimes. And then an award that your club can receive is also called Every Rotarian Every Year. So if every Rotarian in your clubs donates to the Rotary Foundation, even if it's just €5, your club will get a nice little flag that says every Rotarian every year in recognition of everybody donating. And I think from looking at the report that you guys sent me, that everyone in your club does donate every year. It looks like everyone made a donation in June at the end of the year. So again, annual fund share, money comes back to you in the form of DDF and World Fund money. After you've made however much you want to donate to the annual fund, consider, of course, Polio Plus or any of the other areas of focus that are most meaningful to you. Areas of focus, just for a little recap: peace building, conflict resolution, disease prevention and treatment, water sanitation and hygiene, maternal and child health, basic education and literacy, community economic development, and then our newest one, which is the environment. Now, really quick, the difference between district grants and global grants is really a question of size. So district grants, at least here in the US, they have a maximum budget of $30,000. Any grants projects that are going to be above $30,000 is something that you want to do a global grant for. District grants, they have to have educational and humanitarian activities that are consistent with Rotary's mission. District grants can be local or international activities. Most people think of district grants as being very local. So here where I live, people think that it's something that has to happen in Wisconsin, but that's not true, because remember, it's really a question of the budget. So we actually have a club here that is very involved with Guatemala in promoting literacy. And they did 2 district grants this year to provide libraries and reading material for children in partnership with clubs that they work with in Guatemala. So it doesn't have to be just local for a district grant. It can also be international. Again, if they're under $30,000, you guys might have different matching rules than we do, but in general, it's a minimum of $500 with a maximum of $14,500 match. And these grants are usually considered as seed money for a project versus a repeated request. So, for example, if a club wanted to build a tennis court in a community, that would sort of be, a health and fitness community project. They would do a district grant to build the court, but after that, any of those upkeep costs, such as repairs, lighting, electricity, nets, equipment, those are going to need to be covered by the community going forward. So the club wouldn't be coming back for more money every year to keep funding the operations of that tennis court, if that makes sense. Does anyone have any questions right now about district grants? Or anything that I've talked about yet?
No.
Okay.
Okay, I'll keep going. So again, taking from my own district here, last year we had 12 district grant projects that we funded for about $53,000. So far this year, we've funded 12 projects to the tune of almost $70,000. We still do have a little bit of money left in that fund. And so in my district, we decided we're going to take applications on a rolling basis. So every month our committee meets, and if we have any applications, we decide that month whether to fund that grant or if we have to send it back to the club for revisions. On to global grants. So global grants are usually a long-term project. They can span several years. The minimum budget, again, is $30,000. When a club is writing an application for a global grant, what those grant managers are really looking for is that this project is going to be sustainable, so that the community will be invested in it and be able to keep it going into the future, and that there are measurable outcomes, whether it's rates of literacy, number of people that have access to clean water, any of those sorts of things, Rotary is going to ask, how are you going to measure the outcomes? Of course, it has to align with one of our areas of focus. And then the magic with global grants happens with the World Fund match. So those district grants is just a one-to-one match. So every dollar or euro of club money gets matched with a dollar of district grant money. When you go to a global grant, you get that dollar of district money to your club money, but you also get 80 cents on the dollar to the district money with the World Fund match. So you are almost tripling your money by doing a global grant. Global grants require international collaboration, so it has to be at least 2 clubs from 2 different countries. And reporting for global grants is submitted directly to the Rotary Foundation and not to your district foundation. Now, Elizabeth?
For a global grant, must both clubs they give the same amount of money, or isn't it important one can give 100,000 and the other can give 30,000?
Yeah, so the only rule on funding for global grants is that at least 15% of the money of the funding comes from outside of the host club.
Okay,
So,
I understood. Okay, good. Thank you.
Yep. So if your global grant was, for $100,000 or 100,000 euros, at least 15,000 of that would have to come from outside of your host club. And then this is where Edwin was going to pop in. Edwin, are you here?
Edwin wrote me that he could not open the link, and I sent it once more to him now. I hope he will pop in, or if not, he wrote me, Erin knows it all anyway.
Oh yeah, he just emailed me. He says he's not working for him on his browser. Enjoy the meeting. Okay, so I'll talk about Edwin's piece, not nearly as well as he would have, since he's more familiar with it than I am. But this right here is the global grant that our district recently helped with in Croatia. And I'm sure some of you are probably familiar with this. It's the Digital Literacy Revolution Global Grant. And I believe the host club was the Rotary Club of Zagreb. So this is actually a picture of some of the kids in the classroom learning with their computers. And what Edwin wanted to touch on when he was going to talk was really the importance of donating to the Rotary Foundation. So I have 2 different slides here. This first slide shows how your global grant was funded. So this grant cost $358,000. Your Croatia clubs put in $32,700 in cash from their own clubs. You had $50,000 cash from companies in Croatia that partnered with you, and then almost $60,000 in cash from clubs throughout the rest of the world. Your $32,000 in cash from your Croatian clubs was matched with $15,000 in DDF and $57,000 from the World Fund. So in the end of the day, I have my little screen here. So you can see here, 36% of the funds for this project came from Croatia, and 64% of the funds came from the rest of the world. And then, so there's actually been a rule change since your global grant happened in, I think, 2020. So the way that funds are matched is different now. Back in 2020, there was a $1 to $1 match with World Fund money. Now it's just 80 cents on the dollar. And I think the World Fund also matched the money from your Croatian companies. So under the new funding rules, if we started with the same amount of money from Croatian Rotary clubs, Croatian companies, and other clubs from around the world. So these are the same starting numbers. Under our new funding rules, your grant would have only had $272,000. Back here. So again, that's a huge difference, 358,000 to 272,000. And the reason for that is that the money from the World Fund was really being depleted with the demand that people had for doing global grants. Obviously, we have a lot of great projects that Rotary wants to fund, and so the answer there was to change the way the funding was so we could stretch it further. So now that $50,000 from Croatian companies wouldn't be matched by any World Fund money. So yeah, again, it's important to keep donating to the Rotary Foundation so that we can continue to provide matching funds as much as possible and make grants happen. Now this here, a lot of Americans think that global grants are something that happens somewhere else. They happen in Africa, they happen in Central or South America, but not something here. But we actually do have a lot of need right here in Wisconsin. And a couple of years ago, one of our clubs in the district funded a mobile medical clinic to go around and give medical care to underserved communities in the area that otherwise wouldn't have access to it. So this van goes around, they do vaccinations, they do education, basic medical care for people that otherwise wouldn't have access to it. Another thing that our district does often, every year we sponsor a global scholar. This costs our district $30,000 in DDF every year. And this is a picture of our current global scholar. Her name is Tierney, and she is studying at Oxford University in England. And she is studying her Master's of Philosophy in International Relations with a focus on refugee health equity. And I was on the committee that interviewed the candidates for her Global Scholars Scholarship, and you know the work that in education that these young people are doing is just really inspiring. So I hope that if your district has money to do for Global Scholars, that you definitely do it, because these young people are just fantastic. Back to the Rotary Foundation's expenditures. So Force Charity Navigator is a company that looks at the books of charities and gives them a rating. The Rotary Foundation has had 4 stars pretty much forever. 92% of all money donated goes to programming and grants, and then a very small amount goes to fundraising and administrative expenses. Now on to a little bit about recognition for donating to the Rotary Foundation. So a Paul Harris Fellow, so every $1,000 that somebody gives to the Rotary Foundation, they get recognized with a Paul Harris Fellow. The first one you get is a little pin like this. And you can also, once you've received, once you have 1,000 points, you can also donate points to somebody else. Maybe your club has somebody that does really great work and you want to recognize, you can transfer points to somebody to give them an honorary Paul Harris Fellow. After that first $1,000, you get little synthetic sapphires and rubies to match your next levels. So you start getting the little blue stones and then the red stones. And then once you reach $10,000, you get a major donor pin and major donor recognition. The benefactor recognition is when you make a donation to the endowment fund, or you include Rotary as a beneficiary in your estate or will to the tune of $1,000 or more. Now for a little bit of statistics about your own club. So thank you to Elizabeth for sending these to me. Your club has 7 Paul Harris Fellows, so people in your club that have donated at least $1,000 to the Rotary Foundation. 3 of your members have earned more than 1 Paul Harris recognition. And you guys, lucky you have a major donor in your midst, so congratulations. Your club, over your 10 years of existence, your all-time giving is just under $25,000. And I would encourage to use a matching campaign to encourage your members to donate to the Rotary Foundation. So what a matching campaign does is it uses your points that existing of your club members have. This is what my club does every year to encourage donation, because we have a couple of members that are have a lot of points from their donations, and they say we'll match for every $100 that somebody donates to the Rotary Foundation, I'll donate 100 of my points to that person also, and that can help get people quicker to that Paul Harris recognition. So if anyone has questions about that, you can ask me, or you can ask any of the foundation people in your district, and I'm sure they can tell you about how to do that. And then this is your club's report on your fundraising analysis. So what's interesting here is, look back in 2019, 2020, it looks like, oh, did you guys get hit hard by COVID like my club did? I see you had 43 people before COVID. And then that's what happened to my club too. But you had a goal of 5,000. Your members donated over $8,000 that year to the Rotary Foundation. And your average giving per capita that year was at $195 per person, which was more than double what your district giving was. And it looks like last year you were at $62 per person in giving. Anyone have any questions about your club giving or anything like that before I move on?
I mean, we know about the statistics and everything, so thank you. But it's nice to see the hearing from you. So yeah, but we don't have any kind of questions.
Okay. So these are reports that your club president and your club foundation can run at any time. And I, as a district foundation chair, I like to look at them before I go visit a club. And sometimes like I recently was talking at a club that had just merged with another club. And in their merger, so one of the clubs used to have a required $100 per person giving, and the club they merged with didn't. And nobody talked about giving until they looked at the graph and said, oh, we forgot to talk about that in our merger. So it's just interesting to see where clubs are. Ways to make giving easy. So again, the Every Rotarian Every Year, which I think your club should be getting because it looked like everyone donated last year. And then also Rotary Direct. If you just Google Rotary Direct, it'll take you right to the page. But you can sign up with a credit card and decide if you want to give monthly, quarterly, or annually. You don't have to think about it. And just the price, well, at least in the US, the price of a cappuccino now every month will get you to that $100 giving level. If your club has further questions about the foundation giving, I believe your club's foundation chair is, oh gosh.
Surgeon.
Thank you, Sir John Ranchi.
Yeah, it's a bit difficult, but he was excused, so he's just saying hi to you. He's on a flight now. Okay. Yeah. Okay, now I see, because my internet connection is a bit slow. But anyways, it's Surgeon, yeah.
Okay, sorry. I stumble over the letters. I'm not sure how to say them all the time. And then Darko is your Regional Rotary Foundation coordinator. I wasn't sure, I couldn't find out who your district person was, but I believe Darko is located in Zagreb.
Yeah.
And hvala vam, E-klub Hrvatska. So thank you very much. And I'll minimize here. Stop my sharing. There's my teams.
Thank you, Erin.
Yeah. Sharing.
Yeah.
Thank you, Erin.
Yep. Thank you again for inviting me.
So it was a lot of numbers.